A girl with long blonde hair looks out the window. Her gaze is full of sadness and thoughts about her past. She was the most cruel witch destroying the empire. In the distance, the window rages the fire, symbolizing the destruction and the chaos that she brought. A man standing in undermined clothes with a heavy look looks like someone who was in the very center of the disaster. He is forced to kneel down. His position is clearly humiliating. The girl in the dark hall is talking to someone, and their conversation is filled with anxiety. She begs someone for help to save the empire. The sounds of whisper and conversation fill the air when a difficult situation is discussed, where an important choice will be made. A man and a girl may experience some excitement. Surrounded by people, they see how their life turns into chaos. Cruel scene. A man harshly throws the girl on the floor, clearly in a fit of rage and struggle for his fate. She is in a terrible position, lying on the ground with a helpless expression. She listens to the accusations. She is called the most cruel and terrible woman who has ever existed. The woman furiously asks what crime she committed to be so cruelly condemned. The girl, despite physical pain, looks with longing and determination. The topic is more and more inflated. Fierce accusations and tense conversations about the fate of the girl and her entire environment. She tries to control herself, despite all the injustice of what is happening. The man nearby tries to reassure her, but the situation gets out of control. The woman turns to men, begging them for help, while she is brutally accused of the death of the innocent. The man claims that she is actually not guilty of murder, but it is difficult to find out the truth. He is trying to protect the girl, claiming that she is not to blame for what happened. Perhaps this is just a misunderstanding. The girl loses strength from the suffering experienced, and her body weakens when she reveals that her innocence cannot be proved. Final personnel confirm the terrible truth. Her son was killed. Revenge is the only thing that she can now wish. A man dressed in an elegant robe stands confidently, expressing a damning. He looks like the one who thinks something big and serious. His words are full of determination. No false accusations will be accepted. He rejects attempts to manipulate the situation. He looks at a woman who falls on the floor and takes a step forward, examining her without any emotions. He slowly moves further, step by step, continuing to say something important. A woman lies on earth in despair, trying to understand what happened. He addresses her, asking a question that makes her freeze. "Have you really killed him?" His words sound loudly. His voice is full of strength when he requires an answer. He raises her harshly, holding her body in his hands, and around the vague conversations and whispers are heard around. In the next moment, his confidence and rigidity become obvious when he turns to another person. The man continues his questions, not giving the interlocutor time for thought. Everything happens quickly and without compromises. Her words gain a new meaning. He continues to listen carefully, understanding the whole depth of what is happening. She should admit what she had to do, which ultimately led to such a terrible fate. But here, an unexpected moment appears. A woman on his knees. His words break through her inner resistance. All those around now understand the true essence of what is happening. The noise around intensifies. A man radiates a calm, but incredible power. He looks at her, waiting for her to reveal her true intentions. She feels his gaze penetrating into the very soul, and this causes her a sense of confusion. He continues to stand, completely absorbed in the current moment. At this moment, all attention is paid to him, and he continues to conduct his game with accuracy and determination. He makes his final speech, stating that the entire Imperial cargo is now lying on his shoulders. At the end of the stage, a woman shocked by everything that is happening sits on the ground, completely broken. A man angrily turns to a woman, condemning her for her behavior. His rage manifests itself in every word. He struck her with all his strength, forcing her to fall to the ground with a loud sound. He orders the soldiers to take her as a traitor and leads her, not paying attention to her suffering. In her eyes, you can see despair when she is taken away, and she realizes that she cannot change anything else. The man, watching her condition, says something about the fact that her crime is irreversible and will need to be punished. Everything around becomes smeared and unclear, as in a fog, when she realizes that this is her fate. The transition to the stage in court, where she is judged for betrayal, and she, it would seem, is deprived of all hope. He sits on the throne, continuing to pass the verdict and expressing complete contempt for the woman. The horrors pop up in her memoirs. She was tortured, forced to sign false documents, and she could not change anything. Now a terrible execution awaits her. Her tongue will be cut off, and her hands will be chopped off so that she could no longer lie. She suffers flour. Suffering is visible in her eyes, but a small spark of hope still burns inside her. A man in an armchair continues to observe, thinking with satisfaction about the punishments that she will suffer. The woman understands that the punishment will be cruel, She is afraid for her life, for everything that awaits her. She turns to a man with the last word, saying that her life is finished, but her soul will remain free. The soldier grabs her hair, preparing to fulfill the verdict. She almost loses consciousness from pain, but does not give up, continuing to fight for her life. The sword is preparing for a decisive blow when everything in her world seems black. In the dungeon, she is now concluded, suspended and murdered without hope of salvation. Screams of pain sound in a dark, cold dungeon while it remains in chains. A woman is exhausted from suffering. Her breathing becomes more and more intermittent and weak, but she continues to live. A woman sits in a dungeon. Her thoughts are full of fear and the unknown. What will happen next? Remembering everything that happens, she meets with her mother and her soothing words full of hope. Mother says that everything will work out if her brother achieves success, which is the last hope for her. A woman walks through the forest, surrounded by herbs and light, but in her soul it is more and more difficult. She thinks that this is the only way. The image of her mother in her memoirs, which again reminds her of how important it is to support her brother. Important moments and conversations when she again realizes her role in this world. She was always subordinated to other people's desires. Mother claims that her brother should be an emperor, and this is important to her. Brother life is her salvation, her role in this cruel world. But she feels less and less that this is her path. I recall how her brother was the one whom she was obliged to support, despite how fate is cruel. And so, her brother, the emperor, becomes the one who leads the country, but he remains those whom she really does not like. The woman receives cruel parting words from her environment, in which she reminds her that her brother is her future. You should serve your brother, he is the emperor, and this is his path, says the mother. The woman responds in despair, doubting if she will have the strength to be those who will be next to this cruel ruler. In her eyes, glimpses of hope that her brother will be those who will save her from all this tyranny. Doubts remain, but her fate is a foregone conclusion. The scene shows how her brother, now confident in his abilities, will perform his fate. Mother again reminds her that the only opportunity for them is to serve her brother, despite everything. The woman looks at her mother with understanding, but also with bitterness. The outside world seems more ruthless, and it loses hope. Her happiness seems distant and impossible, and her life remains only one of many invisible wheels in this cruel world. A woman in prison continues her struggle for survival. At this time, something hostile is happening in the castle. She again is surrounded by people who continue to manipulate her fate and life. They again begin to discuss her brother, confirming his importance and power, which puts her in a position where she has nothing to expect, except to be used. A woman is trying to make excuses, but her words do not find a response. She feels more and more lonely. In her memoirs, the image of a strong man appears, who seems important to her and relatives, despite everything that happened. Remembering the latest events, she understands that she cannot fight against all this, but still does not give up. The woman is in the center of events where her life is at risk, and her actions seem useless. While she is again charged, she has to fight for her existence, realizing that all this was done for the sake of power. She decides to find a way to survive in this terrible world, despite all her past mistakes and falls. There is only one thing in her thoughts: to find the way to be saved, and get at least small freedom. But more and more brutal accusations and threats appear, and she feels her position worsening. They begin to act more sophisticated against her, and she sees her life turn into a nightmare. At this time, new events take place in the castle when every step becomes important to her. Meanwhile, the castle is covered by fire and the suffering of the heroine continues. The whole world around the woman collapses, and her life completely depends on her next step. She meets a man, and his gaze causes confusion in her. She feels that this moment will decide her fate. Suddenly, step by step, she begins to realize that her brother may be those who destroy her. Complex experiences and internal experiences continue to fill her soul when she faces this terrible fact. Asking herself questions, she understands that her fate now depends on her brother, which leads her to even greater despair. A man appears in the hall, and her view of what is happening changes. Fate is again in his hands. In the dungeon, surrounded by a fog of rumors, she realizes how much her life depends on what she knows and can control. The whispers about her future are amplified, and she begins to realize that she will never be able to change much of what is happening. In her memoirs, moments come up when everything seemed different, when she had more hope for the future. In the dungeon, the creak of chains still sounds, and she understands that her fate has been decided. With each step along the narrow corridor of the dungeon, her life becomes more gloomy, and hope leaves. From fatigue and pain, she almost loses consciousness but does not give up, trying to find a way to get out. The walls of the dungeon are crushed. She realizes that there is no way out in this cage, and despair gradually absorbs it. And so, when the chains ring again, she suddenly feels how the pain intensifies and something breaks into her heart. In her mind, the thoughts are spinning that perhaps she will not be able to cope with this crazy world. All her attempts to escape are in vain, and despite physical pain, she cannot stop. Something dark awakens in her soul. Laughter, like an answer to powerlessness, because she cannot believe in what is happening, breaking the chain of internal resistance. She feels how laughter becomes her only way to survive. She laughs loudly and insanely, as if the world around her collapses, and only her laughter remains. People appear behind her, and one of them takes a step back, realizing that what is happening is only the beginning. However, her laughter is silent when she understands that this was the last stage of her fall. In a dungeon, she meets the gaze of another prisoner who feels the same pain and isolation. Her heart sank with pain when she saw her gaze full of despair, which could not be fixed. All that she did not bring the result, and now it remains only to look into the future with horror. In her mind, the ring pops up, the symbol of her fate, how she was forced to this path, how she was used. Dreaming that someday getting rid of this pain, she understands that her life is part of someone's game, in which she no longer has power. The woman, realizing her role in this world, understands that her fate is already predetermined, and her life no longer belongs to her. Mother no longer consoles her, and all the words that she speaks seem empty and inexpressive. In her memoirs, her brother appears, with whom she once shared hope and dreams. But now everything has changed. The woman feels her heart sank with pain when she realizes that her life has always been part of other people's ambitions. At every moment she loses faith in herself more and more, and feelings cannot find a place for herself. Surrounded by all these changes, she desperately tries to understand what is happening, but farther away from the meaning. The woman feels her soul break from contradictions. The fear of the future is becoming more tangible. Waiting for her end, she feels his approach with every step, and her forces decrease. But there are still people around her who are trying to create a path for her. Perhaps the only one who can lead her to salvation. The woman goes outside, into the night fog, feeling the cold covers her. In her thoughts appears the image of a person with whom she is connected, and she feels that something begins to change. In this foggy world, she sees him, her brother, in the image that was previously alien to her. Anxiety appears in her breast, but she cannot restrain her tears when she realizes that she can no longer believe anyone. Once alone, she feels how difficult it is to breathe when her desires and fears come across. She lies in bed, and the thoughts that all this will end begin to threaten her mind. She hears steps and understands that someone is approaching. This person may change her fate. Gloom and cold pass through her feelings, and she realizes that now everything depends on her choice. The woman meets with him. This is the one who was close to her and gave hope. He stands in front of her, and her heart begins to beat faster when she understands that she cannot continue to hide her feelings. He smiles at her with a slight laugh, but she sees something more behind this smile that makes her heart beat again. He goes along the corridor. His steps are confident and decisive, but tension is read in his eyes. He continues his way, not paying attention to the world, absorbed in his thoughts. Suddenly he stops. His gaze falls on portraits that radiate hidden hostility. His eyes glide in the image, realizing that the past does not let him go, and everything around reminds of his struggle. The portrait of the royal family is a symbol of power and pressure, which still affects its actions. He continues his way, and each step is more and more heavy, because hidden emotions begin to seep out. His gaze is full of anger when he encounters obstacles that are set before him. He continues to go, despite every new test, knowing that his strength depends on his determination. Suddenly, the news that the Empress lost consciousness begins to spread among people, and his attention switches to this event. Meanwhile, the news about the fall of the Empress is becoming more and more common, and the yard covers anxiety. A woman in bed is trying to justify herself for her actions, but her condition becomes more and more critical. Fire burns in her eyes when she decides to make a decision. Despite her pain and weakness, she continues to fight for her life and her fate, realizing that she has a long way. In her gaze, determination is read, despite the difficult situation. The woman breathes heavily. Her body cannot bear all the pain, but she does not give up. She asks for forgiveness for her mistakes and oath promises to change her fate. She again turns to a man who recently became part of her life, asking him to hear her and give a chance. A man, in appearance absorbed in his determination, remains unnoticed by the rest, but her request makes him think. He promises to help her, despite all the difficulties, and their eyes are found at the time of understanding. She again loses consciousness from fatigue and pain, but now there is a hope that her life will be saved. In a dungeon, surrounded by gloomy thoughts and loneliness, the heroine thinks about the latest words and how long she's already here. Fatigue and bitterness are read in her eyes. She can no longer fight this cruel world. She wonders how much time has passed and how long it will remain in this dungeon. Reflections on time emphasize her despair when she realizes that perhaps her life is already over. The sounds of steps in the dungeon violate her silence, and she hears something approaching. Every step, anxiety grows. Suddenly she begins to laugh, but this laughter is full of despair, as if her hopes had already disappeared. She suddenly notices that someone next to her is a person who seems to have come in her footsteps. She meets the gaze of the stranger and asks herself the question of who this person is and what his intentions he has. This unknown person reveals her doubts, and she realizes that now her fate depends on his actions. A person quickly helps her get out, but her mind refuses to work. She is in a panic and cannot normally perceive what is happening. She is desperately trying to understand what is happening, but her thoughts are confused, and she is already on the verge of despair. He quickly leads her along the dark corridors, and she feels how her body begins to take, but she still resists. Despite fatigue, she continues to go, despite the obstacles standing in her path. A storm rages in her heart when she understands that she is again free, but a new threat comes with this liberation. She hurries, trying to get out of the palace, and her heart beats faster, as if the whole world is against her. The sounds of the environment intensify, and she feels how the danger is getting closer, but she cannot stop. Soon she is safe, and her thoughts are lost when she tries to understand what had happened. In her mind, the image of the one who was nearby appears, and which can become her salvation. The man who saved her looks at her with a worried expression, and she understands that now her life depends on his decisions. She lies on the bed, but her mind does not calm down, because every step of her fate leads to new turns. Again, lying in bed, she feels pain, but her thoughts do not give her rest. She is trying to understand how long it will last. Memories of the outside world pop up, about what is happening outside these walls, and anxiety covers her soul. She thinks about the person with whom her fate is now associated, someone from the past who still holds her in their hands. Suddenly, the question is heard in my head, how long it will be sharpened in this captivity. On her knees in front of her, the man asks for help, paying her attention to important points. She wonders what should happen so that she can get out of this hell. She recalls how she felt pain and fear, but her determination is growing inside her. Her interlocutor's gaze is aware of her weakness, but she is ready to fight despite this. He asks her to help, although he understands how difficult it will be to take a step forward. The woman feels her mind exhausted, but she still decides to continue to fight for her freedom. She recalls how everything seemed possible in the past, and thinks that perhaps there is still a chance of salvation. The man looks at her, confident that they can get out of this position if she dares to trust him. She hesitates, but understands that she has no other choice. The woman begins to fight with herself. Her body is exhausted, but the will remains inconsistent. She feels her forces leave her, but the thought of salvation does not give her rest. Each step is now given with difficulty, but it cannot stop. The man continues to look at her with hope, supporting her steps, helping her move forward. He believes that in their power to change this situation, despite all the difficulties that are facing them. The woman feels that the plan begins to loom, despite the chaos that surrounds her. At the moment when it seems that all hopes have disappeared, she finds the power to move on, thanks to the magical influence that can change her fate. She draws a magic symbol on the floor, desperately trying to find a way to change her fate and gain freedom. The lines of her work are becoming more nervous. She feels that her time is running out, but continues to act. In her hands, magic begins to work. She tries to concentrate, but every moment seems tense. She looks at the sky. Her efforts begin to bring the result, and she understands that there may be a chance. A sudden outbreak of light, magic works, and the woman feels how her forces begin to recover. The magic circle begins to radiate light, and she feels how the change begins. With every moment, magic is becoming stronger. It is surrounded by a strange radiance. The woman takes off. Her body is filled with power, and magic reaches her peak. A man standing nearby notices this, and looks at what is happening in surprise. He exclaims in horror, realizing that something great was happening right in front of his eyes. He hurries to her, trying to understand what was happening, and why she has changed so much. The woman begins to move. She feels her forces grow, and she manages to break out of the dungeon. She comes into the light, feeling how magic helps her gain freedom. In this new space, she understands that the changes are real, and she can control what is happening. The woman gets to her feet again, feeling light and freedom in every step. She turns to look back, but no longer feels fear. Everything that was restrained before was now gone. She returns to reality, realizing that her struggle is not completed, but now she has the strength. She again hears the voice of a man who turns to her, surprised at her change. She resolutely answers him, knowing that now she is ready for a new struggle for her fate. The man lowers his head, feeling how hard it is for him to accept what is happening. But he understands that he was not facing the woman he knew. The woman clenches his fists, recalling her long-standing vow to a given person who gave her a chance to change her fate. She realizes that her future is now connected with this person, and her decisions will have consequences. The promise given to her makes her suffer, but she is ready to live with him, despite pain and doubts. In her hands, magic and power, but what can she do with them? She still does not know. Suddenly she finds herself in a new place, surrounded by luxury and nobility, and her mind returns to reality again. A woman sits at a table on which a variety of dishes are laid out, but she does not experience appetite, absorbed in her thoughts. Her brother, sitting nearby, fills the atmosphere with complex sensations and internal contradictions. She still decides to be calm, despite everything that is happening around. The brother looks at her with an worried look, but she decides not to delve into conversations until she gets more information. After their discussions become more and more tense, she decides to leave, but her actions leave a mark in the eyes of others. The woman realizes that she cannot act according to someone else's will, but her soul is still attached to these events. She tries to follow the rules, but her inner world does not allow you to ignore her desires and intentions. She decides to talk with someone who is connected with this world and may become the key to her future. With every step, her confidence is growing, despite the doubts that are trying to absorb her. Her whole life will now depend on what she will do next. The door creaks, and her gaze meets with a new person who can change her life. Her steps, filled with determination, lead her to the answers, which she had been looking for so long. The woman is faced with a new test, but her spirit is not broken. She asks questions that will help her understand what is happening and how she should act further. Soon her views are found, and the new chapter of her fate begins to be written. The woman turns to her maid, Alice, with a request, and her face expresses determination, despite his inner anxiety. The maid notices her tension, but remains careful and ready to help. The woman holds back her emotions, answering Alice that everything is in order, but her eyes give out her condition. Alice understands that her mistress hides her feelings but remains nearby, ready to support her. The woman decides that she needs to be alone, and asks the maid to prepare everything necessary for going to the temple. Soon she goes to the temple to find peace and clarity in her thoughts. Alice helps her smile, knowing how important her mistress looks confident and calm. The woman notices Alice's care and feels relief from her support. On the way to the temple, she asks Alice to prepare all the details for the picnic, which is planned the next morning. The woman also asks her outfit to be prepared, and recalls that she needed to cook tea for a picnic. They pass through the courtyard, and the woman notices the atmosphere of calm that surrounds them. The woman sits down in front of the mirror, and Alice begins to lay her hair, carefully giving them a shape. The woman replies that she does not need anything complicated, only neat and simple style. Alice, seeing her calm expression, understands that the hostess wants to remain minimalistic, but stylish. However, Alice decides to make a slightly more neat styling, knowing that her mistress does not like excess elaboration. In response to her efforts, a woman with a smile notices that the result looks very beautiful, but slightly surprised. The maid makes fun of her age, hinting that she should begin to think about her personal life. The woman is slightly embarrassed, and replies that her plan is to just go to the temple. The maid continues to joke, raising her mood, but the woman remains focused on her intentions. In the end, the woman continues her way with a smile, realizing that despite all the trials, she controls her fate. The maid looks at a woman with concern, realizing that her lady hides her feelings, despite external determination. The woman, standing in front of the mirror, clenches his fists, thinking about her position. Thoughts about the complex life that she leads, and how she should cope with this world, appears in her head. She again addresses her reflection, choosing words to calm down before the upcoming step. In the mirror, she notices her face, determined, despite the hidden experiences. The woman notices how her gaze changes, and becomes clear that her decision will not be changed. Thoughts about her future pop up in her mind, about how important it is now to follow your path. She understands that she herself will decide her fate, despite all the difficulties that are waiting for her. The woman decides to go out, despite all the hesitation, to complete what he has begun and give herself a chance for the future. She confidently takes a step, going to her goal, despite doubts. On the way, she meets the one who can change her fate, and everything falls into place. The woman feels how her steps become more confident when she understands that she is ready for any call. Different feelings fight in her soul, but her mind remains clear, as never before. She decides not to worry about trifles, but to focus on more. With every step, she understands more and more that her life and actions are now in her hands. The woman turns around. Her gaze is full of determination, and she knows that her future will be the way she will make him. From time to time, her thoughts again return to those who were nearby, but she decides to move forward. She understands that in her life now, there is no place for regrets, only for new opportunities. The woman goes to her future, ready to face any difficulties that expect her. A light smile appears on her face when she sees new horizons in front of her, opening in her way. A woman reflects on her mother and how her fate is connected with her heritage and duties. She understands that everything she does is connected with her status and role in society. A woman is preparing for the next step, realizing that her decisions will determine her path in this cruel world. The maid helps her put herself in order, doing everything possible so that she looks flawless. After her hair was laid, she looks in the mirror, evaluating the result. A light smile appears on her face. A light atmosphere reigns in the room, but the woman's inner concern remains. She tries to hide her experiences, but her gaze says that she lacks confidence. When she looks in the mirror, her thoughts again return to difficult issues that she cannot solve. The maid reminds her so that she does not forget about her duties and give attention to others. The woman nods, agreeing, but there is still emptiness inside her. Trying to force herself to act, she is preparing to go out, feeling that she needs to continue her journey, despite fear and doubt. On the way to a new place, she feels how her attention is focused on the tasks that she has to solve. She understands that despite her fatigue, she must continue to move forward. The woman notices how everything around her changes, and she has to face what she did not expect. She feels her steps become more confident, despite the internal torment. And although she is not entirely sure, she decides to trust her intuition. A woman is preparing for a new test, knowing that everything she does can change her fate. She meets again with an important person who can help her determine her further path. The man carefully looks at her, and she understands that this is a decisive moment for her future. The maids, watching a woman, admire her beauty and grace, but the woman remains absorbed in her thoughts, ready to solve her fate. The woman, turning to her maid, with a slight reproach, reports that she does not need phrases about praise. She continues to answer, knowing that her answer is the result of hidden emotions and anxiety. The woman calmly replies that she had already done everything, despite external worries. Alice completes her work, and the woman puts her last detail, a headdress. A woman is preparing for an important exit. Her steps sound firmly, emphasizing her determination. She leaves the room, and her steps become even more confident. Outside, she meets others who are ready to support her, but her attention remains focused on her goals. The woman notices the situation around and understands that she will have a difficult road. A man next to her makes a remark that now is not a time for obstinacy, offering to go to Victoria's celebration. However, the woman decides to follow her own path, not succumbing to persuasion. The man explains that he supports her decision, but is not sure that this is the best move. He continues to discuss how he will act to ensure his position, despite different obstacles. The woman understands that this conversation only complicates the situation, but she cannot turn back. The man insists that their actions should not depend on one solution, because the consequences will be significant. The woman continues her movement, deciding that her path will not be simple. She notices that her goals with every step become more and more distinct. The woman thought about the fact that not always everything depends on the willpower, but she is still ready to move forward. The man admits that the last nights he experiences strange visions that make him act in a certain way. He shares his sleep, which worries him and makes him look for answers. The woman, having heard his words, understands that there will be still trials in their life and decides to continue her path. The man notices a woman passing by, and her image causes him a special excitement. An interest appears in his eyes. He feels something strange, as if this meeting is not accidental. A woman sits in a chair. Her eyes are full of longing and thoughts about her future. The man takes a step forward, heading for her. In his eyes, determination and hidden pain are read. The woman feels the pressure of the situation, but continues to remain calm, despite the growing excitement inside. The man begins to speak, but his words do not immediately reach her. She is absorbed in her thoughts. In his head, questions come to which he cannot find an answer, and it seems to him that he understands that he needs to act. A woman draws attention to his attention but remains restrained and does not show her emotions. The maid notices the anxiety of his mistress and tries to approach to calm her. The woman decides that she needs to continue her path despite the complex feelings. Soon, her thoughts are returning to the fact that she must continue to move forward, despite doubts. She decides that her path will not end here. The man, noticing her determination, decides to follow her as if it were his chance. He understands that her fate is now intertwined, and he should be near. The woman comes out. Her steps are sure, and she feels that now her decisions are important. She again notices a man, and a silent understanding appears between them. Everything seems simple, But in her soul a storm rages, which makes her act decisively. The man respectfully looks at her and understands that her path is not as simple as he thought. He feels that her support can become a decisive factor in the future. The woman continues to go forward, knowing that her elections will determine her fate and the fate of others. The woman quietly tells the man that she does not need his thanks, because he simply fulfilled his obligation. The man is a little embarrassed, but quickly replies that he cannot but express his gratitude for her help. The woman sighs, deciding not to delve into conversations, as she already feels her goal in front of herself. They continue to go, and the woman notices how the man stares at her steps. He nods, saying that he will soon see her again, and they disconnect. But there is tension in the air. Their steps gradually subside, but the woman feels that her future still depends on the decisions that she will make. They both go in different directions, but their paths intersect again, as if fate decided to connect them again. The woman almost loses her balance, but the man quickly comes to her aid. He catches her gaze when she reaches the door of the temple. Suddenly, she holds out her hand in his direction, as if something tells her to take this step. He wraps her hand on her hand, and she feels how their connections become stronger. The man smiles restrainedly, showing that everything will be in order, but doubts are tormented inside her. The woman tries to hide her emotions, but her eyes give out all the experiences that she experiences. He carefully leads her to the carriage, and the woman feels how her heart begins to beat faster. Their hands are connected even more when they sit in the carriage. The man gently holds her hand. Her heart beats frequent, as never before. Inside the woman, anxiety is growing, but she cannot stop, feeling that she should move forward. When they are approaching the destination, she once again meets his gaze, realizing that their fate has been intertwined. A man helps her to come out, and she feels how her strength is filled. Despite all the experiences, a new path is revealed in front of them, and their hands are connected again when it leaves the carriage. The woman looks out the window. Her gaze is directed at the horizons, full of hopes and questions, but her inner world is still full of doubt. She sighs, thinking that her path is now laid, and all she can do is follow him. In her mind, thoughts flashed about what she should do next, but outwardly she retains calm. Sounds begin around her, and she hears the temple approaching. The light step of her companion suggests that they are really close. The woman continues to look out the window until the carriage moves along the road, and her thoughts do not leave her. The man next to her turns around and notices that her gaze was still in one place, directed into the future. He decides not to intervene, knowing that her thoughts and experiences are important to her. Upon arrival, they leave the carriage, and the man says they arrived. The woman thanks him for his escort, but feels how her heart begins to fight faster, because she does not know what awaits her next. She goes towards the temple, noticing people who came to meet her. The man monitors her movement, and she feels his gaze but does not turn around. She enters the temple. Her steps become confident, despite the hidden unrest. Here others meet her, and she feels how everything begins to take shape, as if she were part of some great plan. She welcomes those who met her, and she does not need words to understand that this place is important for her future path. She is accompanied by Inside, and she feels the calm that comes with this acquaintance and mysterious environment. Her leading person explains that they go to the holy place so that she could be heard. The woman understands that this will not be just a visit, but a step into a new reality for her. The doors of the temple open, and it steps inside, where a new fate meets it. Inside the temple, her gaze meets that she had been waiting for so long, the true revelation that awaits her ahead. A woman in the temple prays. Her hands are folded in a prayer gesture, and her face reflects the inner struggle. She closes her eyes. Her thoughts are filled with requests and hopes that her path will lead to a better future. A woman prays with a deep feeling, and her words are full of hope for salvation and protection. The flame of the candle burns gently, symbolizing its faith and hope, directed to the future. The servant of the temple approaches her and asks if she wants to meet with a bishop in order to get a blessing. The woman replies that at first she needs to rest a little before she continued the meeting. The minister nods and promises to prepare a pavilion for her, where she can relax. He adds that he has another request that he wants to discuss with her. The woman listens carefully, feeling how in the air it becomes even more tense. She monitors the movements of the minister while he makes his proposals. He asks her to fulfill one important matter, promising that it will be in her interests. A woman with disbelief accepts his words, not confident whether it is worth trusting him. But despite doubts, she understands that she needs to do this to move forward. Outside the window you can see the sunset, and the air becomes a rich expectation. The woman takes a cup and resolutely takes a step aside, knowing that a decision awaits her ahead. As soon as she drinks, her confidence increases, and she is ready to make an important decision. At this time, her attention is attracted by the noise on the street, which recalls the approach of new events. The woman gets up and takes a few steps, feeling that her moment had come. She stands in front of a person who represents something important to her, and her heart begins to fight faster. The man seems to be aware that her fate can change at that moment. The woman looks at the man and calmly confirms that yes, she is his daughter. He seems to be surprised, realizing that everything that happened has much more complex roots than he thought. The woman continues that she for a long time realized that their paths would interpret, but did not think that so quickly. A man with a smile says that she could not hide her intentions, because even her plans seem to be carefully prepared. The woman sighs inwardly, not wanting to share the details of her strategy, and continues her way. He notices her concentration, watching her confidently walking forward, and understands that this is a woman from his dreams. In his mind, images associated with her eyes pop up, bright as an emerald, and the feeling that fate had abandoned them at that moment. He decides that for her it is worth making an effort, and thanks her for the help, which received confirmation of her determination. He pours tea, feeling that their conversation can take some time. He thinks how his fate has changed when she entered his life, and how her presence became for him a certain harbinger. But he does not expect that this meeting will lead to such an important step. His thoughts are restless, but he decides to listen carefully. He drinks tea and expects the next step when she continues her story. The woman stands in front of him when she begins to discuss more important issues, claiming that she is ready to turn the page. She calls him Your Highness with a slight bow. The man listens with interest, but his soul is tormented by anxiety. He feels that a meeting with this woman will open unknown horizons for him. A woman makes a gesture as if confirming her words. The man begins to cough that he does not hide his confusion and thought about how to happen next. He continues to feel her magnetism and importance, but does not expect his life to fundamentally change. He laughs, feeling the words spoken by this woman stagger him, and so he takes a step that now seems inevitable. He realizes that he is ready for changes, that they are no longer only familiar with her, but perhaps they will be together for many years. The woman asks a direct question, not expecting an answer that could change her perception of current events. The man listens carefully to her, noticing how she confidently builds her steps. He understands that she was always smart and calculating, which makes her more dangerous and attractive at the same time. He continues to say that despite all this, she should be careful, because a stronger enemy will always follow her actions. The woman accepts his words for granted and decides not to rush with the decision. He notes her ability to always find the right words and make reasonable decisions. The man raises an eyebrow, not expecting it to respond so confidently that until recently it seemed only a possible problem. She seems to be ready to accept this challenge and take a step towards those who can become her allies. However, she realizes that to achieve her goal, she will need to work with those who had previously been enemies. She decides that for success she needs to maintain composure, despite possible temptations and mistakes. He feels her determination and willingness to act, which makes him think about further actions. The woman is sure that she will do everything to achieve her goal, despite all the difficulties. The man decides that his support will mean more than just words, and you need to act on the basis of this. He assures her that his goal is to maintain her in achieving the goals. The woman listens to him and makes the decision. She will only move forward without stopping. She draws attention to the symbolism that they both understand, and decides that now she is ready to move on. He looks at her with respect, realizing that her strength consists not only in her determination, but also in her abilities and courage. He is ready to support her in any decision that she will make because she is confident in her strength and wisdom. The woman gets up, preparing for the new steps, confident that her choice will be correct. The man silently watches her, realizing that they both now cannot stop moving forward. The temple has a tall figure in the shade, surrounded by candles. Her face has a serious expression. She prays, whispering the request for protection. A hand extended for prayer holds a white flower tightly. The hero's face reflects determination and uncompromising in actions. The light of the candle illuminates the figure of a woman whose eyes are full of determination. In her gaze, the power of the spirit is read, and she continues her request. The camera shows a burning candle, a symbol of hope, and the shadow of the statue, as if it responds to a prayer. The woman gets up, gratefully accepting her blessing. Her eyes are full of determination, and awareness of her strength gives her confidence in further actions. They begin to talk, but the mysterious figure in the hood remains silent, only watching what is happening. A hand, carelessly removing a flower from a dress, symbolizes the completion of the prayer and the beginning of a new stage. In a conversation, she decides that she will not follow. In other words, she must find her path. The spiritual leader offers his leadership, But the woman decisively refuses, standing in complete self-confidence. The bright moment when a woman sits alone and reflects on further steps, thinking about how to avoid the upper intrigues and pressure. The new path is revealed to her, but she decides to go with caution, realizing that each decision can lead to unpredictable consequences. A woman gaining strength is preparing to meet an important figure whose decisions will determine her future fate. There is some tension in their meeting, but the woman remains calm, looking into the future with full determination. Picture from the past. She is faced with some difficult choice, but her path is more and more clear despite difficulties. The conversation about the future led to an understanding of her role. She understands that her actions will have influence on the fate of others. Moments of the transition when her path intersects with a new ally, ready to follow her driving. Eclipse, when a woman is aware of the severity of decisions adopted earlier, but her gaze is more and more directed to new goals. They begin a new journey, leaving everything that cannot be changed. With each step, she moves forward, led by intuition and inner strength. The final point. The choice is made. She is ready to lead those who trust her. The couple sits at the table on the terrace, surrounded by autumn leaves. A man in a dark suit and a woman in a long green dress. Invisible tension reigns between them. The man sits in silence, looking thoughtfully aside. The woman nearby is concentrated on tea. Her gaze hides thoughts. The man holds a cup of a drink from which the liquid splashes. His facial expression is serious and concentrated. The man turns to the woman with the question. His eyes are full of expectation. He clearly wants to hear the answer. A man and a woman go along the terrace. Their hands are almost concerned, but unresolved issues remain between them. The woman takes his hand, and their views intersect. Seriousness appears on the woman's face. She is ready for conversation. The man continues to sit. His gaze is directed down, while a woman in the picture looks decisive. The woman calmly answers. Her face is slightly softer, but she still retains internal determination. The man expresses his doubts, but still decides to talk about his goals. He is still confident in his decision. The woman, although young, intends to take responsibility. Her desire to become independent and obtain the title is clearly expressed. The woman, looking around the world around him, thinks thoughtfully. Her face is covered with deep experiences. The man observes what is happening, and in his eyes it is visible not only of interest, but also the question of further actions. The man makes a gesture, expressing his position. His face expresses easy dissatisfaction with the situation. The woman looks thoughtfully at him. Her gaze is full of determination and understanding that there are difficult solutions ahead. A man sits, looking at a woman with a cold expression on his face. His calm hides an internal conflict. A woman looks at a man with an unexpected offer. Her face reflects some sadness, but also determination. The man answers. His eyes are full of respect, but he decisively affirms his position. The woman is a little bewildered, but her determination is gradually stronger. She is ready to move forward, despite the difficult circumstances. The woman looks at the man. Her eyes are full of hope. She asks for help in the future. A woman, full of determination, turns to him. Her face expresses gratitude and hope for the future cooperation. A man in royal clothing stands in the center, personifying power. He looks decisive, with a halo of light, as if ready to accept his fate as an emperor. The next picture depicts a calm garden, in the center of which is a white pavilion, creating an atmosphere of peace and mystery. The man holds a cup in his hands. His face expresses tension. In his actions there is anxiety, as if he was hiding his experiences. The man reacts intensely. His teeth are clenched. He cannot restrain the emotions that boil inside. A woman next to him calmly listens. Her face is slightly serious. She clearly realizes the importance of what is happening. The man reports that the king did not choose the crown prince, and the woman, listening, does not show strong emotions, only confirms his words. The woman sits at the table, enjoying the tea party. Her gaze is calm and concentrated. A group of people appears in the picture, including aristocrats. Their actions are associated with the upcoming important decisions, and their face expresses intention. The man decisively turns and leaves, leaving the woman alone at the table. Her gaze is directed into the distance, and it is clear that she is lost in her thoughts. He leaves. His back is hidden in the shade, and the woman remains to stand, feeling his departure leaves behind the void. The woman walks in the garden. Her steps are measured, but in her eyes there is indecision and search for answers. She thinks out loud. It seems that she is trying to find the right decision in the situation that surrounds her. Another worried figure approaches a woman with the question of whether everything is in order. The woman is a little nervous, but tries to stay calm. The one who came up reports that what is happening is concerned and expresses his anxiety for the woman. The woman listens carefully. Her face reflects deep anxiety and confusion. Her thoughts are crowded with anxiety. She again looks at the cup in her hands. Her gaze is lost. She cannot gather her thoughts. The evening landscape reveals nature full of shadow and mystery. In the air, the feeling is in the air that something important comes. Darkness gradually occurs, and light appears in the picture. A feeling of expectation appears with it, as if a decisive moment is nearing. A cup of tea stands on the table, symbolizing the forgotten moments and the nebula of thought. A woman is suitable, and asks a question if she is not sure that it is time to return. A woman and her friend are sitting, discussing how long you need to wait. The woman looks thoughtfully at the cup in her hands. A woman's friend notices that someone seemed to have already left and expresses his assumptions. A new character, a man named Benjamin Connor, represents himself. He is from the Western Army. Against the background of the evening sky, the sound of steps is heard. Someone is suitable, and the picture depicts a group of people in the dark. The woman is surprised to notice a man who comes up and looks very serious. Stars in the sky create an atmosphere of peace, adding stress to the upcoming clash. The wheel creaks and knocks on the path when a group of people moves forward. A man in the form of the Western Army commands to stop. His voice is determined. From afar, a carriage is approaching, which creaks on the road, creating an atmosphere of night anxiety. A man from the army begins to ask questions about the reason for their appearance in this place. His face expresses suspicion. The man says that he obeys orders aimed at supporting a woman to a safe place. His confidence is not in doubt. The man explains his role and the task. He takes a woman in the place of the West, and his voice sounds firmly and without hesitation. He exclaims about the high status of a woman, mentioning her title when they meet with a new character. We see how he enters the house, and the figure from the window looks at him. This is a new meeting with interest. The woman asks a man about his goals. Her face expresses anxiety and surprise from an unexpected meeting. The man replies that he was forced to help as the carriage broke, and his help became indispensable. The woman notices his attention to the details, noting how important every moment is in their meeting. A man is perplexed why a woman still travels without protection. His gaze is full of doubt and care. The woman replies that circumstances were just like that, and not by her will. She says that she was in this situation by chance. The man listens carefully, nodding, and clearly continues to maintain the conversation, expressing interest and attention. A man with a smile notices that a woman is now an adult lady, and she reacts embarrassedly to his remark. A woman blushes from his words, and this causes her easy confusion. The man reports that he will accompany the woman back to her residence, and she thanks him. A woman with a smile says that she does not need accompanying, but thanks a man for care, emphasizing his independence. The man answering claims that he should not worry. Everything will be in order. He will only deliver her home. The woman will look out the window, watching the wagon leaves. A light smile appears on her face. A man on a horse continues to accompany a woman. His figure disappears in a night shadow. A man makes a remark when speaking of the temple and daughter of a certain important person, mentioning his mission. With a smile, he comments on the possible development of events and hopes that everything will be in order. The man nevertheless expresses the doubt that the girl is still a little preoccupied with the last events. The woman is also trying to be confident, and she confirms with a smile that everything will be fine. The man again expresses the hope that everything will work out, and she will be calm. The woman continues to think about the situation, thinking that he is still here, despite the circumstances. Thoughts appear in her eyes. She continues to follow what is happening around, preoccupied with the situation. The wagon creaks, driving along the night road when they approach the house. Against the background of the night landscape, a magnificent house appears, the house to which they go. A woman with determination goes along the corridor. Steps can be heard. Her friend follows her. The woman discusses with a friend how the gifts look that she should convey to important people. A friend notices something and is surprised to ask what kind of noise when they go further. The woman stops at the door, ready to enter, but notices something unusual in the process of their journey. The woman expresses satisfaction. Her face is calm when she hears about fulfilling the request. The servants who disobeyed her bowed and respect her, confirming that everything will be done. The woman, confident in what was happening, walked forward, following the servants who prepare her for the next step. The picture shows how a woman considers the contents of the table. Her gaze is concentrated and thoughtful. The woman, continuing her work, closes a small amulet, making a ringing. In the room you can hear someone thanks her for the help, and she answers with a smile. The woman, noting that the situation requires more attention, expresses her anxiety about an important meeting. The determination appears on her face. She pays attention to the details that require her participation. She passes along the corridor. The doors open, and she is inserted into the hall where the next meeting is waiting. In response to the request for the entrance, she thanks the servants, confidently stepping inside. The woman notices that important events are taking place in the corridor and calms herself that she is in the right place. The woman decisively asks the question, checking whether she needs to know something else about the current state of affairs. The question that she asks indicates her concern about the situation and the need to be on the check. She decides to take control of the events, stating that she has to cope with them. A woman makes a nod in response to the consent of the servant, expressing gratitude. She continues to pass, illuminating the path with a bright light, which makes her journey important and solemn. The woman goes, feeling the importance of the moment, her confident steps echoed along the spacious corridor. A woman meets with a new character, and his gestures show respect for her status. The character speaks of a visit, emphasizing that they arrived at the request of the emperor, and expresses respect. The woman modestly bows, her face expresses gratitude for the meeting and proper respect. The man, sitting at the table, watches a woman with interest. He draws attention to her changes. The man, continuing the conversation, notes how she changed from the last meeting, and asks the question of how she looks now. The woman restrainedly reacts to his remark, continuing the conversation. The man interestedly asks the woman's age. Obviously, he sees in her an adult woman. The woman responds with some excitement, saying that she is an adult, and this causes her a slight nervousness. The man laughs, confirming that she is adult enough to make important solutions. The man continues the conversation with a slight mockery, saying that perhaps she is still too young for marriage. A woman, in response to his words, restrains emotions with an expression of calm, emphasizing her opinion about marriage. The woman calmly answers the man, expressing her gratitude for his care and support. The man, feeling gratitude, continues with a smile, but with a slight hint of continuation of the discussion. The woman notices something in the corridor when a new person appears, and decides that you need to be on the check. The woman draws attention to the unexpected arrival of the guest and speaks of this with discontent. The man leaves at the direction of the woman, and she continues to solve further steps. The woman escorts the man, after which she continues to go about her business. The woman heads towards the hall where she is already expected. She continues the conversation about the arrival of the count, which is an important part of the upcoming meeting. The woman, having heard information about the visit, realizes that this is an important point and is ready to take measures. The woman confidently states that she will make sure that everything goes according to plan. The woman confirms that she had already guessed about the visit, but this remains part of her assumptions. A man admires her abilities and expresses respect for her intuition and mind. A woman with anger screams, demanding that someone leave her way. Her face is full of determination. The character in an orange dress answers her, screaming that she should leave. The woman, without losing his self-control, answers with restraint, welcoming the interlocutor and asking what she came with. She raises her hand, demonstrating calm and willingness to continue the conversation. In response to behavior, a woman in orange sharply puts a slap in the face, and the scene is filled with tension. A woman, embarrassed and shocked, tries to suppress emotions, but her gaze expresses disappointment. The characters standing on the stairs look at each other, which shows their awkwardness in this situation. A woman in orange requires another woman to call her mother down, creating pressure. The woman covers her face with her hand, expressing her feelings of disappointment and fatigue from what is happening. The woman, holding back emotions, turns to the interlocutor, dissatisfied with her behavior. The interlocutor answers, emphasizing that a woman should not worry, but should be strong. The woman answers again, showing that she is not going to give up and continue to fight for her rights. A woman in orange states that she needs to leave, but she is clearly disappointed with the course of events. The count in a conversation expresses his concern to the situation, noting that the conversation about evil will not bring results. In the distance, an image of the house appears in the picture, creating an atmosphere of despair and thoughts. The woman, abandoning emotions, finds a solution, and her gaze is full of confidence and strength. In response to the alarm, the woman is calm, confident that everything will be decided. The woman speaks with confidence that her actions will lead to the desired result. She explains that despite all the difficulties, the result will be positive and important for everyone. The interlocutor asks the question what she thinks about the possible consequences, and the scene is filled with expectation. A woman in an orange dress screams at the interlocutor, warning her not to interfere with her. A woman with a green look responds with determination, despite threats. A woman in a green dress with a cold expression asks a question, expressing a willingness to check the words of the interlocutor. She raises her hand, demonstrating her confidence and power in this situation. A woman in an orange with a confused look cannot hide the alarm from the situation. A woman begins to lose balance, which is expressed in her reaction to what is happening. A woman in green stops a woman in orange, grabbing her hand. A woman in orange begins to pull her hand, feeling her restrained. The woman in orange, answering the question, looks directly into the eyes of the interlocutor, emphasizing her confidence. She continues to say with a challenge that if she is confident in her rightness, then let her act. The woman in green calmly answers, expressing that she is not afraid of what is threatened. A woman in green, continuing her speech, recalls her status and how she evaluates what is happening. A woman in orange with anxiety shows that the situation is serious. Her face is tense. A woman in green continues to maintain confidence and expresses that the past should remain in the past. The woman goes along the corridor. She has even more confidence. A woman in orange retreats, not knowing how to respond to such words. A woman in green shares with the interlocutor important information about how important this moment is. A woman in green again focuses on her role and determination, leaving the interlocutor in thought. A woman in green looks forward, refusing to return to the old path. A woman in orange asks the last question, leading to the culmination of the conversation, leaving the interlocutor in silence. A woman with determination says that he will forget everything that happened today, and asks the interlocutor to return home. She looks out the window, thinking about the words that no one wants to be noticed in an unsightly situation. The woman turns when she is asked what to do with the countess, and calmly replies that she will be accompanied. The woman stands, watching how the conversation about the countess is going on. Her face is serious. The man eavesdropping on the conversation, expressing concern, but deciding not to intervene. The woman turns to the interlocutor with quiet words about how not to bother the emperor during his rest. The woman continues to go down the stairs with a certain determination, not wanting to show weakness. The woman holds back her emotions, despite the inner tension, trying to remain calm. She continues to move forward, not giving the interlocutor the opportunity to see her in a vulnerable light. The woman finds the strength to ignore the situation and calmly goes along the corridor. Her thoughts are absorbed in the idea that she cannot afford to look different than usual, despite a difficult situation. The woman feels a sharp concern, but continues to behave with dignity. The man follows her stairs. His steps sound in silence. His gaze remained on her. The man does not hide his anxiety and carefully monitor how she moves. The woman does not react in his opinion, remaining focused on what she has to. The man examines her with restraint, but expresses his doubts, showing that she has to face the consequences. The woman meets his gaze and answers calmly that nothing terrible happened. The woman worships, showing her respect, despite the difficult circumstances. She explains that what happened to the countess is the result of her actions, but she cannot change what is happening. The woman continues to step forward, despite criticism, and looks forward, ready for new tests. The woman says that she will forget everything that happened today and asks the interlocutor to return home. A man with a smile says that she has a generous heart, and his reaction to her words is easy and confident. The woman replies that her actions were erroneous, and she asks for forgiveness, since her actions had influenced others. The man respectfully continues the conversation, not insisting on the decision and giving the woman the opportunity to return home. The woman continues the conversation, not paying attention to external circumstances, restraining herself and not showing emotions. The man gives her a gift, hoping that this will be a worthy expression of his respect and gratitude. A woman with curiosity considers a gift, interested in his meaning and what she should do with him. The man explains that this is a gift intended for her parents, and they both must accept him as a sign of respect. A woman thinks how best to respond to a gift, doubting the correctness of her decision. She decides to accept it, realizing that this will be the best option, and expresses gratitude. A woman with a smile replies that she accepts a gift, despite her shyness and uncertainty. The man happily demonstrates the gift and insists that she accepts it, enjoying the moment. The gift opens, and there is a valuable decoration inside, which causes both interest and admiration. The woman carefully studies him, evaluating the beauty and style, with respect for accepting a gift. The man continues to enjoy the moment, putting the rings and showing them to the woman, waiting for her reaction. A woman takes a gift in her hands, feeling the significance of this moment and preparing for the next step. The man admires her, showing his affection and interest in her when she pays attention to the rings. The woman turns, accepting a gift. Her face expresses gratitude and soft smile. She gladly opens the box, finding another gift inside, in surprise exploring it. A man, pleased with her reaction, smiles, not hiding his pride and happiness from the fact that she accepted his gift. A woman restrainedly accepts the words of a man, recognizing his attention and warmth, but inside she retains determination. A man in response expresses the joy of communication. A warm expression appears on his face. The woman gratitude admits that she is pleased to be part of this circle of communication and feels respect. The man continues to talk with her, expressing gratitude for her participation, and she, in turn, feels the joy of communication. She stops, feeling how important this meeting is, and does not allow emotions to take over. The man expresses interest in new undertakings, and they continue to go towards the next stage of their communication. The woman smiles, feeling satisfaction, and continues to move forward, knowing that it is important to continue to act. Moments of tension are replaced by complete calm, and they continue their path, confident in their abilities. The woman stops and looks around, reflecting on past events and possible consequences. She understands that this whole situation only opens up a new path, but will not necessarily lead to success. Feeling that she is on the verge of making an important decision, she decides to follow her intuition. The woman sighs deeply, feeling how this moment became important and turning in her life. The darkness of the night and the luminous moon against the background create an atmosphere of alienation and uncertainty. In the distance, a man standing in the open air appears in the picture and absorbed by his own thoughts. He feels confused and under pressure. His face expresses the struggle with internal contradictions. The woman continues to think about her life and decisions that she is to. Realizing that all this is inevitable, the man stands in the shade again. I feel how his thoughts carry him into other worlds, full of unexpected decisions. The scene changes to something more dark when a sword bursts out of the man's hand, plunging everything into the blood. A man with rage in his voice says that he will not stop at his goal and will act decisively. More characters appear in the stage, aggravating the conflict and leading to the time that will change their fate. The man decides to protect those who are dear to him and serve as a faithful defender. He reflects on a woman who makes him doubt his mission, solving situations where security is at risk. In his thoughts, the question continues to spin about how to solve the problem with a woman, and what to do with it. Under the dark sky, he feels an internal conflict. His thoughts return to important moments. Birds sing against the background of the morning sky, and the man is still thinking, trying to figure out what is happening. He meets his companion, and they begin the conversation, trying to figure out his recent night experiences. His interlocutor notices that he did not get enough sleep, and uneasily asks why he is so worried. The man answers with seriousness that he cannot afford to be distracted by rest, since there are more important things to come. The man continues to move forward, promising to solve all the problems and prepare for the next step. He decides to visit a place that is important for his next mission, and walks around the palace. A horse appears in his way, and the horseman crosses the courtyard, confirming the importance of what is to. The man, approaching the gate, feels the importance of what is happening, and his steps become more decisive. At this moment, he enters the room where other important personalities are already waiting for him. Someone reports that the Grand Duke wants to meet him, and he is not tolerated to start a meeting. The man enters the room where he is met with respect and interest. One of those present asks what he needs, and he answers with confidence, not hiding his intentions. A man expresses respect for the interlocutors and begins his speech with respect. A woman with her daughter enters the room, and the atmosphere becomes even more tense. The man politely welcomes the Countess and notices that perhaps her appearance distracted him from important deeds. The interlocutor reacts to his words with a slight laugh, emphasizing the ease in the atmosphere. The man smiles, feeling safe and comfort, talking about his view of current events. He notices that even with such a tough attitude towards others, he still feels emotions and feelings. Laughing, the man continues to discuss the situation, while expressing interest in current events. The man continues his thoughts, feeling that he needs to deal with current problems. The man feels how questions begin to penetrate deeper into his mind. His face expresses uncertainty. The man asks if this is attitude to a woman named Artesia, noting that the situation is more and more confused. The man abruptly changes his eyes, surprised by the question of a woman, and answers with confusion. The man, feeling tension, listens to the answer but remains in doubt about the subsequent steps. The man almost smiles, realizing the whole absurdity of the situation, but at the same time it is still alert. A man with a slight ironic smile continues communication, hinting that everything that happens seems strange. The man continues to argue, not wanting to concede in this conversation, despite all his calm nature. The man sighs deeply, realizing that the situation with a woman named Artesia will be a difficult test for him. The man resolutely answers, preparing for further discussion of the question. The man continues his speech, commenting that the situation with the woman will be solved if you accept certain steps. He asks the question of what led the woman to this situation and how all this could end. A man expresses dissatisfaction, realizing that his patience begins to end. The man, noticing the tension, remains calm. Despite irritation from everything that is happening, the man relaxes, smiling, but his inner tension is visible even through a calm appearance. A man comforts the interlocutors, making it clear that he is ready to continue the conversation, despite the recent unrest. The man in the final of the conversation calmly continues the discussion, not allowing himself to lose control of the situation. The man serves a cup, asking the interlocutor to drink, despite the tension in the room. The man, taking the cup, experiences bitterness from what is happening, and his expression reflects anxiety. He continues to drink, trying to hide his doubts, and his expression becomes even more serious. The landscape outside the window looks calm, but inside, the man the experiences seat up, his thoughts about the upcoming decision. The man is interested in where Lady Arzia is, and is looking for her presence in the house. The servant reports that Lady Arzia left, not knowing what actually happened behind this absence. The man, having heard the answer, is surprised, and decides to find out what happened at the count. He expresses a wish to wait a bit so that Lady Artesia will return and they can continue the conversation. The man looks doubtfully, feeling that what is happening creates tension, and his gaze is directed towards the employees. One of the servants with a grin reports that Lady Artia with some master, and this causes a man a slight concern. The man, sighing, continues the conversation, feeling growing anxiety because of the situation. He is annoyed, realizing that there was an error, and is trying to rectify the situation, making amendments in his behavior. The servant continues to explain that this is a misunderstanding, and the man begins to feel an internal conflict. The servant, being under pressure, feels awkward, and a nervous expression appears on his face. The man, continuing his reaction, apologizes, realizing that all this led to additional problems. The man decides that you need to take responsibility for what is happening, but does it with some regret. The man feels that his decisions have not yet been completed, and he has to take additional steps. He continues to go along the corridor, feeling the need to change something in the situation with Lady Artesia. The woman, realizing her role and status, makes important decisions, deciding how to continue to act. She asks for help, deciding that only with support she will be able to cope with new challenges. A man standing in front of the building, with an expression on his face, says that he needs more time for reflection. The man's gaze is aimed at the structure. He is concentrated, analyzing the importance of what surrounds him. People in the building are preparing for the ball. Noise and expectation are felt in the air. The woman enters the hall smiling, despite the tension, and watches what is happening. The woman is happy to notice the old familiar. Their meeting is full of mutual respect and smiles. The woman notices that the face of Lady Artesia reflects the thoughts hidden behind a smile. Lady Artesia smiles, paying attention to her interlocutor, expressing goodwill. Lady Artesia, despite the early parish, did not join dancing and asks a question about the reason for this. The woman jokes, saying that someone should begin to decorate the walls to create a suitable atmosphere. Lady Artesia, with sadness in her voice, replies that when she began to dance, it was too exciting to her. Lady Artesia goes to others, noting that her questions remain unanswered. She is surprised to realize that all this is due to how people perceive her. Men begin to discuss how she again appeared in the same clothes as before. Lady Artesia notices how quickly changes occur, and her face expresses easy discontent. The woman, eavesdropping on conversations and hiding a smile, notices how others react to Lady Artesia. A woman, with slight sarcasm, thinks that you should not pay attention to minor misunderstandings. Lady Artesia draws attention to her shortcomings, saying that you should not spend money on expensive dresses. She bitterly admits that it is not worth spending resources on things that do not correspond to her appearance. Lady Artesia discusses how important it is to choose clothes that emphasize dignity and does not hide them. In the final, the woman turns to the interlocutor, completing the conversation, emphasizing how important it is to consider the opinions of others. The woman admires the sophistication of work, noticing how well the design of the dress is selected. She is surprised that someone really gets attention to such details so closely, but her admiration quickly replaces doubt. A woman, with an expression on her face, asks a question, not believing that there may be so much attention to such trifles. The interlocutor explains that the fabric and embroidery are really very expensive and rare, standing a fortune. The woman, paying attention to the dress, asks the question of whether such expensive materials were really used. She recalls important moments, trying to understand how she got into such a situation, trying to figure out real motives. The woman in surprise listens to the story of the value of the fabric, but her thoughts seem to become even more confusing. Following the thoughts of the interlocutor, she notices how much effort is applied to create such an incredibly expensive dress. Lady Artesia, succumbing to the pressure of the situation, expresses her concern about how an expensive dress can affect her position. The discussion develops into a conversation about financial difficulties. and the woman notices how everything looks rather suspicious. Lady Artesia, despite her concern, tries to hide her fear, and her face for a moment becomes more tense. Lady Artesia continues to reflect. I feel that it is necessary to take decisive measures in this situation, and tries to pretend that everything is in order. The woman finally decides to return to the essence of the issue, abandoning unnecessary experiences, and her gaze becomes firm and confident. She smiles, confident in herself and in the correctness of her decisions, despite everything else. A woman with a smile addresses the interlocutor, confident that all difficulties will be able to defeat appearance and confidence. The situation in the hall is reviving, and the woman continues to feel the tension in the air. People in the hall begin to whisper, discussing recent events, and conversations are becoming more and more tense. Men in the hall, standing nearby, are surprised at an unexpected visit, discussing the reasons for his arrival. All attention switches to the greatest duke when he makes his entrance to the hall, attracting general attention. The evening, filled with obscure moods, continues to develop when he enters into a conversation with the rest, emphasizing the importance of what is happening. Lady Artesia notices how other women admire the presence of the Grand Duke, and inwardly feels uncertainty. Women discuss his attractiveness, and one of them cannot hide admiration. Lady Artesia quietly observes what is happening, deciding to remain inconspicuous, but still cannot but pay attention to the Great Duke. Lady of Artesia is aimed at a man. She feels that his attention is attracted to others, and this is slightly bothering her. The conversation discussed the Great Duke and his possible relationship with women, creating an intrigue. Lady Artesia tries not to show her feelings, although the heart beats faster at the thought of him. The woman gladly welcomes the Grand Duke, trying not to give out her excitement. In response to a greeting, she tries to hide her emotions but internally worries. Lady Artesia takes a step forward, feeling the tension at the time of the meeting, and thinks about her next actions. Seeing closer, she understands that she is not ready to open completely, despite the surrounding light. Lady Artesia feels strong surprise when she notices that the situation is not developing the way she expected. She thinks that her life takes an unexpected turn, faced with new challenges and decisions. Lady Artesia, a little confused, realizes that this moment will change all her expectations. The Grand Duke politely turns to her, holding out his hand, and she slowly accepts this gesture, pondering her next steps. Lady Artesia fluctuates with the gesture of the Grand Duke, feeling how important this moment is. Her heart beats faster, and she feels how all attention is focused on this gesture. She asks what brought him here, but remains doubtfully, not knowing what to expect. The excitement is growing, and she thinks about her feelings, trying to understand how to proceed. The Great Duke carefully looks at her, and this expression makes her feel awkward. Lady Artesia understands that this moment will change their relationship, and looks at him anxiously, preparing for the consequences. The man notices that anxiety is displayed on the woman's face, and gently pulls her attention. He carefully looks at her facial expression, asking what happened, with a slight anxiety. The woman, surprised by his reaction, notices that he will raise her face, and feels uncomfortable. She answers with slight surprise, not understanding what caused a man in such a reaction. The man notices how the corners of her lips stretch down, and decides to express his concern about her condition. The woman feels his attention, and his proximity becomes tangible, but she tries to hide her anxiety. She answers without trying to hide her thoughts, and the man carefully monitors her every word. She turns her head, expressing her nervousness about the current situation. The man continues the conversation with determination, trying to understand what is really happening. He expresses doubt, and the woman, feeling pressure, explains what really happened. The man regrets that she experiences tension, and expresses his readiness to do everything possible to calm her. She relaxes for a moment, realizing that her feelings are really important to him, but does not allow herself to show weakness. The man understands that her excitement is connected with her duties, and decides that they should return back. She decides to move on, ready for new challenges, despite the inner anxiety. The woman confirms that she is ready to move forward, despite all the difficulties. The man and the woman go together, heading for the further development of events. At this time, a new face appears. The Count, and the atmosphere in the hall changes. Lady Artesia apologizes for her mistake, holding back her embarrassment, and apologizes for recent actions. Lady Artesia continues the dialogue, hiding her feelings and expressing respect for others. A woman with determination continues to go, despite the hidden experiences, and is preparing for the next step. A man notices how Lady Artesia maintains a distance, and decides to pay attention to it. Women in the hall begin to discuss his attractiveness, expressing their emotions. Lady Artesia, noticing the man's gaze, feels how the voltage in the air increases, and worries it. The man looks cold at her, feeling that the situation is becoming more and more intense. The woman asks if she can be a friend of Lady Artesia, showing interest. Lady Artesia, smiling, replies that she is really a friend and understands the importance of this communication. A woman, with a smile, claims that she really cares about Lady Artesia, but her actions seem superficial. Lady Artesia realizes that the attitude towards her from others can be false and is worried about this. The woman asks if this is true, puzzling everyone in his own words. The man answers with a mockery that it is not worth worrying, but his views indicate another. The word behind the word, the conversation becomes more personal, and the Lady Artesia feels how it is under pressure. The atmosphere is becoming more and more tense, and those around them begin to whisper. The man suddenly takes Lady Artesia's hand, and she feels how her heart begins to beat faster. Lady Artesia goes next to him, noticing his gaze and asking herself questions. The man again glances at the Lady Artesia. His gaze is full of feelings that she cannot understand. The woman feels on the verge. Everything around begins to seem somehow blurry, and she tries to gather forces. Lady Artesia plunges into the thought of how she looks in the eyes of others, trying to figure herself out. She understands that the outfit she wears at the ball is not so good, and it bothers her. Lady Artesia notes that her appearance is not admirable and feels inner disappointment. The man, paying attention to her appearance, notes that her figure is very fragile, that he did not hide from his gaze. Lady Artesia feels a strange tension when a man holds out a hand, offering her a dance, and her heart begins to beat faster. The man continues to reach out, but Lady Artesia feels a slight chest pain, trying not to succumb to emotions. Lady Artesia looks at the man and answers with a slight hesitation, feeling inner doubt. The man addresses her again, offering a dance, and Lady Artesia realizes that her life can change dramatically. The woman is surprised to notice the reaction of others when they begin to whisper about her decision. She, a little embarrassed, still decides to accept the offer of a man, despite fear. The excitement of the Lady of Artesia intensifies when she hears the whisper of others, not understanding how to act. The man notices her doubt and tries to reassure her, offering not to worry. Lady Artesia agrees with fluctuations, realizing that this is not only a dance, but also a chance for changes in her life. The man continues to insist that this will be a good opportunity, and he will support her. Lady Artesia is slowly coming with him, feeling the tension becomes more and more tangible. The man notices her tension and quietly assures that everything will be fine, supporting her in this decision. The woman expresses doubt, saying that she is not very good in dancing, but decides to try. A man with a smile replies that it will be easy to dance with her, even if they are both not perfect. Lady Artesia smiles with relief, realizing that she is not the only one in this experience. They begin to dance, and music fills the hall, creating an atmosphere for something new. Lady Artesia takes the first step, following a man, feeling how every moment becomes more and more important. The dance continues, and Lady Artesia feels how music and movement unite them. The woman is surprised to notice how everyone around begins to discuss their dance, and this only strengthens her doubts. Others discuss their harmony and admire their dance, and Lady Artesia feels how all her experiences go away. Lady Artesia feels the music filling the space, and the dance continues to bring them closer. Her thoughts begin to blur when she feels his hand at her waist. The man notices that Lady Artesia seems to be lost in the moment and is slightly distracted. He holds her restraint to her, trying to bring a little lightness to tension. Lady Artesia is trying to return the focus and look at the partner, but the eyes of a man full of attention make her feel awkward. The man gently whispers that he never thought that she would be so good in the dance, despite her doubts. Lady Artesia, a little bewildered, answers with a smile that dancing with him is a completely different matter. At this time, whispers and discussions begin to be heard among guests. Lady Artesia notices how people carefully monitor their dance, and this adds anxiety to her. The man, seeing her confusion, assures that do not worry about other people's eyes. The main thing is to enjoy the moment. However, Lady Artesia, continuing to dance, feels how the look of others becomes more and more tangible. She begins to avoid the eyes of others, trying to focus on the dance. The man, having felt her tension, asks the question, did she expect that she would attract the attention of everyone at the ball so quickly? Lady Artesia replies that she does not like being in the spotlight, but cannot reject the obvious. The man does not hold back a smile to hear her words. He notes that despite her restraint, she still attracts attention like no other. The woman, looking into his eyes, understands that her anxiety concerns not only the gaze of people, but also his presence nearby. Lady Artesia decides to ask a question that has long tormented her. Why does he behave so confidently with her? A man with a slight laughter replies that he is simply not used to shyness, and he likes her sincerity and honesty. Lady Artesia reflects on his words, feeling that her relationship with him begins to accept a completely new turn. She decides that she will not hide her feelings, and despite the alarm, decides to continue to dance with him. The music is replaced, and the dance continues to bring it amazing sensations. Lady Artesia notes that her anxiety disappears when she is next to him. The man carefully monitors her every step, and Lady Artesia feels that their connection is becoming stronger. At some point, her leg is accidentally stumbling, and she loses balance, but the man deftly supports her, preventing the fall. Lady Artesia feels his hand wrapping her around her, and she smiles gratefully. This dance and these moments become something important and unforgettable for it. The dance is completed, and Lady Artesia feels how her heart is furiously pounding with emotions while the man supports her, confidently leading her around the hall. She is slightly embarrassed when her gaze meets him, and feels her face burned with excitement. The man notices her confusion and smiles softly, reassuring her with his gaze, as if trying to say that everything is under control. Lady Artesia understands that her sensations are much stronger than she expected, and this scares her. Applause is heard around, and guests begin to discuss their dance, admiring their grace and synchronism. A man with a light laugh notices that dancing with her was easier than he expected, and she could not help smiling back. Lady Artesia feels her shoulders relax, and her breath becomes more even, despite the excitement. The man continues to lead her easily, showing how he cares about her comfort, avoiding any tense moments. Lady Artesia cannot hide a slight smile when he again looks at her with such attention and sincere interest. He jokes that if not for her, he might not be so good in dancing, and she laughs in response, understanding how her feelings change for him. Jokes and light irony interfere with their conversation, but this is more than something more that both begin to feel. The dance continues, and Lady Artesia notices how her anxiety begins to disappear, giving way to an increasingly pleasant sensation. When the music ends, the man carefully helps her stop and retains her balance, while her heart is still beating a little faster. Lady Artesia looks at him and understands that she likes to be with him, not only in the dance, but also in moments of calm. The man smiles and thanks her for the dance, assuring that he was pleased to spend this moment with her. Lady Artesia, a little embarrassed, thanks him for his care, and their views meet again, filled with a quiet understanding. They leave the dance hall, and Lady Artesia begins to feel that this evening has become important and unusual for her. The evening continues to turn around, and Lady Artesia understands that the dance has become not only a physical movement, but also the beginning of something new. The man, smiling, says that it will be better for her if she does not hide her feelings anymore, and she feels her heart take another step towards him. Lady Artesia gratitude replies that she will be pleased to be near him again, and the first sparks of future changes begin to be seen in their relationship. A man with a smile tells a woman that everything went without problems. He looks calm and confident. They exchange glances and the man holds out a woman's hand, offering her help. The woman looks somewhat worried, but decides to answer the request of a man. The man reports that he plans to go to La Viga and asks if she wants to accompany him. The woman is wary that La Viga is a dysfunctional area in which even men rarely happen, and she is interested in why he is there. The man looks a little irritated, but does not explain what personal affairs he needs to be solved in such a place. The landscape is changing, and the picture shows mountains, which symbolizes the beginning of a trip or an important stage in their history. In carriage, wagon noise appears, which may indicate the beginning of the trip. A woman sits in a chair thinking, possibly about her future, or about those complex decisions that she will have to. The man continues to speak, dwelling on the issue of the transaction, possibly related to her future. The wheels of the cart continue to rattle, creating an atmosphere of movement to something important. The woman sits quietly, while the man next to her continues his thoughts. The woman answers him with an expressive look, as if inviting him to continue. The man looks a little stunned, asking a difficult question. "Why do you want to divorce so fast?" The woman thinks thoughtfully. It seems to her hard to pronounce these words. The atmosphere becomes tense, and both heroes are closely monitoring each other, realizing the seriousness of the situation. In the picture, an image of a woman with an aura appears, as if she personifies a certain secret knowledge or power that the main characters should unravel. The woman seems to have already made a decision, and explains her feelings. She does not want to be with someone who has already made a decision on a new novel. A man, slightly irritated, does not hide his dissatisfaction with the fact that she cannot understand the reasons for his act. In the last points, when they sit nearby, the woman explains her position, and it is clear how both characters begin to understand that their lives may never be the same. The woman restrainedly declares that she does not want to become an empress, although the situation is becoming more and more tense. The man looks at her doubtfully. and, it seems, his plans begin to deviate from what he expected. The woman does not hide her determination, and says that she is fully aware of the seriousness of what is happening. She clarifies that she has one condition that a man must accept in order to continue their interaction. The man looks at her with interest, perhaps trying to understand what she has in mind. He is still confident in his intentions, but expresses discontent in relation to the situation. The woman recalls that she should retain her position, despite the fact that he does not understand her opinion. The atmosphere is tense, and her words emphasize her determination not to retreat. The man tries to be confident in his decision, however. His expression shows that he begins to lose patience. She, in turn, does not change her decision and confirms her position. The man seems to be serious about this conversation, and his determination is expressed in his gaze. The woman, unable to withstand the tension, laughs at some point. But this laughter is rather bitter. She quietly expresses her gratitude for his concern, but understands that they still go along different paths. The man sits nearby, absorbed in his thoughts, and they both try to comprehend the current situation. The landscape is changing, and a destroyed place is shown in the picture, perhaps a symbol of some destroyed world or future conflicts. The scene in this frame still reflects the difficult state of the world around him, where the life and fate of people are intertwined in the shadow of disasters. The movement begins, and a wagon that accelerates its move, striving for a new stage in their journey, is shown. A man helps a woman get out of the cart, thereby showing that he is ready to support her in any situation. The woman holds something important in her hands. Perhaps this is a symbol of her determination or a new path. The man carefully raises her in his arms, possibly symbolizing his desire to take responsibility for her safety. The man respectfully helps the woman get out of the cart, recalling that a real gentleman always provides such a service to the lady. The woman thanks him, but the expression of her face indicates some kind of anxiety. She cannot relax. Passers-by begin to pay attention to them, and someone asks for help, expressing gratitude for mercy. The crowd seems to be praying and asking for help to some heavenly forces. At this time, the woman notices something strange around. Her gaze rushes to the side as if something was alarming her. Someone's hands appear from the darkness, and the woman apparently feels danger. Voices in the dark continue to ask for help, setting up the situation at a dramatic moment. A figure appears that a woman and a man are met, and it looks like a new important character in their history. A man helps a woman hide under the hood, trying not to attract excess attention. The woman turns around to the man again, asking him questions. She does not feel completely safe. The man answers her calmly. He did not expect such difficulties on this day. The woman, it seems, was not ready to meet with this new person, which causes her anxious anxiety. Suddenly, the situation changes. Someone rushes abruptly at them, trying to interfere with their plans. The man reacts instantly, pushing those who threaten, and the woman is still in the shade. The man turns and decisively declares that they should move on, despite the current situation. Suddenly a loud sound is heard, which resembles a collision, and the situation becomes more and more tense. The man, without losing calm, again declares that they need to leave, forcing people to retreat. He helps the woman get up despite all the difficulties and directs her further. Step by step, they leave a dangerous place, trying not to attract excess attention. In the night darkness, with a fluttering cloak, they move to a safe place, and in the picture there is a moment that is reduced to calm, completing this fragment of their journey. The man and the woman continue to walk along the deserted streets. Their steps are sure, but anxiety is in the air. The man asks the woman whom she is going to meet in this place. The woman replies that it will be a butler, whom she has not seen for a long time, and she must meet him. She explains that this person previously served in the Rosen family, but after the death of the last Marquis, he was kicked out. The woman adds that this butler may have dissatisfaction with her and her mother. The man thoughtfully listens to her explanations, unable to appreciate the whole depth of the situation. She continues that, despite this, she will decide to meet this person and find out what happened. The man intently listens to her words, thinking how all this will affect their plans. They are approaching an abandoned building, and a sign appears in the picture confirming that this is exactly the place. Soon the door of the building creaks and opens, which is why the atmosphere becomes even more mysterious. A woman and a man enter, and the noise created by their steps reminds of tension in the air. Inside, the creak of a wooden floor sounds, as if long-forgotten secrets are stored by the walls of this place. Their steps sound in empty corridors until they meet the butler, who is surprised by their visit. The butler, armed with a broom, asks what brought such noble people to this abandoned place. The woman calmly replies that they need to talk to him, and they continue to move around the room. The butler in surprise asks what they are looking for in this place, and why they are here. The woman asks him to wait a bit, and the man remains nearby, watching the situation. The butler does not seem to understand what is happening, but gives consent and continues to go about his business. At this time, a sound is heard, as if someone carefully leaves, and the butler continues his affairs. The man with suspicion asks if someone would really like to kill them, but the butler replies that this is not so. A man with a woman enters the room, and he tells her to go to a certain place. At this time, the door of the old building creaks, as if hiding something. The man, answering the question, explains that it is difficult for him to fulfill the request, because in many years he has become too connected with this place. He says that difficulties in communicating with others often arise because of his past, but confidently says that they will still be able to solve the problem. The woman explains that she just came to deal with this business, and she has a specific goal. A man cannot hide his excitement, explaining that he cannot provide any information right now, because a lot remains unclear. The woman, noticing something strange, stops slightly and asks a clarifying question. Suddenly, something rustles, and her fingers, clenched into a fist, signal that her anxiety increases. The woman remains in thought while the man continues to go in the same direction. The sound of steps and a retreating step sounds louder than ever, creating an atmosphere of alert. A man, as before, does not lose calm, but he sees that more and more obstacles arise on his path. He understands that something is wrong, and his eyes are filled with anxiety when a woman represents herself as a daughter of a very important character. The butler is scared, realizing that the woman is indeed the daughter of an influential person with whom he was familiar. He begins to worry, trying to find an excuse for his actions, but the woman remains unshakable. He complains that all this was a heavy burden for him and holds back his anger. The woman, not paying attention to his emotions, says that this is important for her family, and she must find out the truth. The man next to her is noticeably nervous, feeling tension in the air. A woman and a man continue the conversation, without stopping going forward, and their determination is noticeable even in the smallest gestures. The butler, clearly irritated, demands to know if the woman is actually happening. The woman remains calm, despite the threats, and indicates that she should deal with this situation. The woman, looking at the man, says that she realizes that her mother sold her to become the heiress of the Marquis Rozan. She restrainedly watches a glass of wine, in which something is dripping, which confirms her suspicions. She recalls the conversations of her mother with others, trying to understand what really happened in the family. A man next to her carefully monitors her reaction, realizing that the situation is becoming more and more tense. The woman explains that her mother did everything in order for her to take the place of the heiress Rozan. The man looks at her with surprise and determination, trying to understand how now it is necessary to act. The butler, in anger, expresses his anger about what is happening without hiding his indignation. The woman, despite all tension, continues to explain that she sees that changes are happening that cannot be stopped. He snorted, clearly irritated, while continuing to experience a wave of anger and fear. His face is becoming more and more threatening, and he feels that everything gets out of control. The woman's gaze remains calm, despite all the threats and pressure. The man claims that he has evidence that can affect the development of events. A woman and a man are discussing what will happen if they decide to provide evidence of what really happened. The woman asks a serious question. Who can now protect them if they begin to fight this? The man replies that it is impossible to find people who would support them in the struggle. The woman answers displeasedly that it will not work out so simply, and replies that this is only the beginning. The woman breaks the silence, claiming that now she knows exactly who is behind all these events. The man asks if she is really confident in her suspicions, and whether she is ready to reveal the truth. The woman is preparing for the next step, stating that her mother should answer for her actions. At this time, an unexpected event takes place. The butler, clearly upset, begins to exert pressure, but they still follow their decision. The man orders his group to hide his names and forget that they have ever worked at Rosen's house, hiding the truth. The room begins to discuss how they move on, while the male figure continues to command. The doors creak, and tense faces accompany the decision to hide the truth until no one recognizes the true state of affairs. A man and a woman approach the old building. His dark silhouette creates a threatening atmosphere. A man, clenching his teeth, is preparing for the upcoming difficult solutions, perhaps that he regrets. A woman with her head lowered again is experiencing difficult moments, recalling everything that brought her here. The man, trying to get to his feet, still lends itself, feeling that his actions can lead to consequences. A woman is trying to achieve the truth, stating that her mother should be responsible for her actions. The woman at that moment, despite her grief, decides to act, insisting on the decision to meet the right people. She leans low, asking for forgiveness to calm the situation, but her eyes are determined. The man answers her in bewilderment, asking why she does this, but his face expresses conflicting feelings. The woman claims that she intends to protect everything that remains of her family, despite all the horror she has to face. She apologizes for what happened, possibly for her decisions or misunderstandings that could influence others. A man, seeing her gestures, cannot but notice her strength in these difficult moments. A woman and a man continue to walk along a dark corridor, experiencing everything that happens to them. The man feels how his words can destroy everything that remained, and he expresses regret. A woman, struggling with emotions, cannot restrain her tears, seeing how everything around is crumbling. The man notices her suffering, but his face remains calm, although concern is visible in his eyes. The woman, having been at the intersection of her decisions, is lost in thoughts, realizing that she is on the verge of a new life. Suddenly a scene appears, filled with anger and fear when someone destroys their plans and they are faced with a new test. The woman is angry, hearing that someone dared to look for her, and discontent is read on her face. She slowly and with irritation answers the question without hiding her irritation. A man, clearly frightened by her reaction, nervously tries to justify himself. The woman asks what happened, and why her name is connected with some question from the Grand Duke. The woman answers the question, wondering who dared to behave like that. She gets up to approach a man, and her gestures become more decisive. The woman glances at the interlocutor, clearly showing that she is not going to concede. A woman with a grin asks how he dared to treat her like that, while her gaze remains cold. The man feels how the pressure increases. His figure is inclined, but he still remains in his place. The woman turns to him, but her attention switches to what is happening around. She waves her hand carelessly, continuing the conversation with cold confidence. The situation is heating up when a man tries to say something, but she does not listen to him. The woman leans back on the chair, leisurely relaxing. She takes a cup and continues to drink, slowly answering his questions. She asks a new question, forcing him to get lost a bit. A woman with a grin on her face continues to reflect, watching his every movement. The question remains unanswered, but she continues to monitor his reaction. At this time, a new person enters, and the woman immediately recognizes him. The steps that they hear are approaching, and the door creak sounds menacing. A man with his task approaches the door, trying to understand what will happen now. A woman looks at a man who brings news that the Grand Duke sent a messenger. She listens carefully, expecting clarifications. When she finds out that the Duke went somewhere with Lady Artisa, her gaze is filled with surprise. The woman asks a question, wondering what kind of unexpected turn of events. At this moment, the type of building appears in the background, and we see how everything develops against the background of architecture. The woman looks to the side, looking with displeasure. An expression of dissatisfaction appears on her face, as if something was not to her liking. The man, noticing her expression, nervously swallows. The young man enters the room, and his steps sound decisively, but with caution. He faces an important situation, and his face expresses seriousness. He agrees with the requirements, but it seems that all this complicates the relationship. A man wants to know what is happening, and is interested in what is the reason for these events. The woman still comes to the room, calm and confident, answering questions with ease. The man seems to be too worried, and the woman does not let him relax, continuing to look for answers. The woman asks questions, causing even more bewilders from others. The man answers, but his tone indicates that he has something to hide. The woman notices the behavior of another, already familiar man who looks confused and preoccupied. She notices his condition and decides to clarify what is happening to him. He, in turn, looks tired, but does not reveal the causes of his condition. The woman notices that the man looks pale, and she begins to suspect that the matter is not in simple matters. The woman asks the man what he had in mind. Speaking of his proposal, her expression on her face is wary. The man replies that he should not interfere in this matter, and she should leave everything as it is. The woman answers with discontent, trying to understand what is happening with this person. A man, disappointed, says that the Duke of Erin is a very important person, and he has strict principles. The woman unfolds sharply, expressing discontent. Her steps are determined. The man explains that the Duke treats her very negatively, and this interferes with their attitude. She feels his coldness, but tries to accept his words as a fact, although they hurt her. The woman decides that she needs to act independently, and she expresses the intention to collect all the assets and property of the Rosen family. Soon her steps lead her to an important conversation with another man, where she again declares her plan. He listens to her words, expressing doubt, but is ready to fulfill her assignment, although he does not like it. The woman leaves, continuing her way, and realizes that everything can change her fate. The man answers with understanding, but he begins to guess about her intentions and remains with concern. The woman again appears in front of him, decisively configured to find out the truth about her future. The man decides to tell everything he knows, but warns her against actions that can lead to tragic consequences. A strange sound is heard from afar, and the woman's attention switches to something important. The woman stops when he heard an important message, and her gaze is filled with anxiety. The man reassures her, saying that there is always a way back, but she remains persistent. She decides that now she will make decisions on her own, despite all the dangers. She and the man continue their way, and they move into the unknown, with determination to follow her plans. The last frame depicts the moment when they continue to go, and their steps sound confident, ready to face any difficulties. The man tells the woman that she struck him, forcing him to feel in this way. A woman is perplexed, not understanding what exactly he has in mind. The man continues that, in his opinion, it would be easier for her to change people if she showed more empathy. The woman expresses doubt about his words, asking the question whether he is too self-confident. She explains that her intentions were never aimed at making him sensitive, but perhaps she made a mistake. The man gently insists that this is not an excuse for her actions, but he himself is responsible. He also continues that, despite his feelings, he continues to take care of his mission and duties. The woman decisively replies that without due attention, they will all lose important points, despite political difficulties. A man in doubt in his voice asks the question of how she is ready to cope with this. The woman replies confidently that she knows what to do, and that this is an important thing for everyone. She continues the conversation, claiming that she is not proud of her actions, but she understands that one way or another, she should do what you consider correct. The man understands that she always acted from the principles, despite the consequences. She decisively states that she is ready to take responsibility for her actions. The man understands her, but does not hide his anxiety, answering that he will be with her. The woman continues her journey without departing from her decisions, and the man is nearby, supporting her. The man jokingly notes that her actions and style remind him of other important personalities in their world. The woman asks why he is so worried, and he replies that because he appreciates her. They approach the wagon, and the man agrees to move on, despite all the difficulties. The woman and the man continue the way, rising into the wagon. The final scene of their movement, a wagon with a crystal ringing, goes into the distance, taking them to a new stage of their journey. The woman leaves the wagon, and a man meets her with a greeting. She answers with restraint, accepting his greeting. One of the servants welcomes her return, offering her to stay for dinner. The man explains that the young master would like her to remain for dinner, which causes her a slight surprise. The woman thoughtfully replies that she may agree, but her thoughts are busy with other things. The man continues that her decision will depend on how she feels. She smiles, and the man continues the conversation, clearly wanting to support the light atmosphere. The woman still decides to accept the invitation and answers with a smile that she is not so important that they will decide. The man notices that she also intends to be with him at dinner, and they continue to move forward. The man again pays attention to her request, explaining that he was ready with her for dinner. The woman feels his attention and answers with a hint that she still should maintain a more formal relationship. The man notices her determination and apparently continues to respect her decisions. She decides to go, with caution, watching how she can do in this situation. The man accompanies her, and her confidence is growing. The woman says she will be careful and go back. At the moment when she again noticed a man, he decides to ask an important question. The woman abruptly asks why he speaks so directly with her. The man is not shy, answering that he considers it an important figure with which you need to be honest. The woman listens to him, deciding not to argue, but to continue the dialogue. The man leads her to the final moment, revealing another aspect of their relationship, which makes her think about further. The woman hears the steps of the horse and turns around, feeling that something is wrong. She notices how someone is approaching, and her face expresses bewilderment. The woman looks around, feeling excitement. Her gaze is focused. A person comes up and welcomes her with respect. A woman, worried, turns around to find out what is happening. That person reports that the young Mr. Lawrence wants to see her. The woman stops, looking at him through the window, not quite understanding why she needs to go to him. She restrainedly replies that she will accept his proposal and go. The woman asks what is the problem with his brother, not understanding the reason for his anxiety. That person explains that her brother wants her to meet with him, since they have not communicated for a long time. The woman looks out the window, trying to comprehend the information. The man continues, waiting for her answer, and she feels the pressure. The woman, thinking about the conversation, admits that it is strange, but still decides to meet. The man confirms that her brother, as always, attracts attention, and this time, he needs more social support. The woman feels that her brother demands too much from her and is annoyed. The servant dares to contact her with a request, and she abruptly stops him. The woman, without restraining emotions, opens the door to meet with his brother. She expresses fatigue from everything that is happening and warns him that he must understand her feelings. The servant, without realizing his actions, continues to apologize, but she remains on her own. The woman asks him a sharp question, expecting him to finally realize how important the present is for her. The woman does not withstand and gives a sharp rebuff to her mother, asking her to calm down. Mother begins to scream, not understanding who dared to stop her. The woman turns to her with a cold look, not allowing her to violate her calm. The servant, concerned about what is happening, politely recalls that she should not intervene. The woman answers calmly, confident that the situation will soon return to normal. The servant, noticing her tension, doubtfully asks if you should intervene. The woman indicates the need to comply with order in the house, punishing the servant. She turns to her mother with care, offering her a cup of tea to calm down. The woman looks out the window, thinking that her mother had to take measures for a long time, but she did not give up. The servant, also noticing anxiety, tries to express his concern. The woman looks at the mansion, noticing how he reminds her more and more a place where she has no place. The woman, sighing, understands that she should show courage in relation to her family. In the room, there is a knock on the door, and the woman approaches her, waiting for a new visit. A woman offers a mother a cup of tea to facilitate her condition. Mother carefully drinks tea, but her eyes are full of anxiety. The woman gently says that she never ignored her mother and is ready to help her. A woman selects the right words to give comfort to her mother. Mother complains of malaise, and the woman offers her a trip to the royal rest mansion. The woman continues to insist on vacation, offering to go to the resort where they can recover. The mother asks a question, doubting the possibility of rest, but the woman assures her that it will be good for health. A woman and a man continue their conversation, discussing the details of the events that are waiting for them. The woman answers with a smile, ready for further communication. At this time, she reflects on how everything will change in the coming days. The woman goes outside and sits in a wagon, set up for important matters. A few days later, they arrive in a new place where the new stage of their path begins. The narrative continues from the appearance of a new place to which they are directed. At this time, news is being discussed, and rumors appear that strange events are taking place. The man in bewilderment asks what is happening at this moment, not understanding the whole picture. The servant is in a hurry with important information about the state of affairs in the house. The woman is more and more immersed in what is happening and feels the circumstances change. In response to questions, a woman answers with restraint, without revealing all the details. A woman with a slight laughter answers comic questions. A man cannot hide the surprise from the unexpected events that occur around. The woman decides to act according to her plan, and this causes a wave of emotions among others. Steps are heard in the hall, and everyone begins to prepare for an important meeting. A man feels pressure, trying to understand what to do in this situation. The woman continues to confidently move forward, despite the tension in the air. There is a meeting with important characters, which changes the course of events. A man is experiencing excitement when he encounters an unexpected turn. In the end, a meeting with key characters reveals new aspects of their future plans. The woman looks at the person who enters the house and asks what led him. He explains that he was sent on behalf of the Grand Duke and reports the important news. The woman looks worried. Her eyes are full of questions, but she remains calm. She turns to the servant to take her into her room. The servant confirms her request, but does not hide the excitement. The woman decisively leaves, ready to cope with the situation. The servant meets her with respect and reports that everything is ready. She confidently gives him orders about the next step. Thinking in her thoughts, but outwardly she remains calm. The woman gratitude accepts his help, but her thoughts are still busy with important issues. The servant continues the discussion, not understanding what causes her such tension. The woman retains restraint, but her words are full of hidden meaning. The servant cannot hide his surprise when she speaks so bluntly. A woman with determination asks a question. Realizing that their future is at stake, she reacts to the situation with full control, despite her complexity. The servant is shocked, not understanding how everything has changed so quickly. The woman, preserving dignity, gives him a clear indication. An important clarification of events opens up new facets in relations between heroes. The woman, despite all the difficulties, shows confidence and stamina. At the end of the scene, it is clear how they both become on the verge of a new stage of their relationship, ready to solve important issues. A woman with determination asks a question, not understanding why her servant does not recognize her authority. The servant, in anger, screams, accusing her of insufficient care. The woman, not embarrassed, answers with a cold look, forcing him to shut up. She gives the servant instructions, and he embarrassedly fulfills her order. The woman feels how his words touch her deeply, but she remains calm. She continues the conversation with restraint, despite her inner irritation. The servant with horror realizes that he did not understand what the woman was talking about and begins to worry. He tries to correct his mistake, but the woman remains unshakable. He asks her a question, trying to understand what the mistake is, but she does not answer right away. A woman draws attention to an important moment before continuing. The woman answers him with cold calm, knowing that he will understand everything later. The woman calmly continues the conversation, but with a slight discontent in her voice. The servant continues to follow her, but begins to feel that he can no longer be mistaken. The woman does not pay attention to him, confident that it is necessary to move on. The woman and the servant continue the way, not being distracted from their goals. The woman recalls the important words spoken earlier and thinks about them thoughtfully. In their conversation, a new tension appears that a woman decides to overcome. The woman begins to understand that the servant is worried about her decisions, but she does not allow him to show it. The servant realizes that he was mistaken, and that a woman really does everything for their common good. In the final, they both understand the importance of maintaining determination in difficult situations, which gives them the power to move on. The woman calmly asks a question, ready to hear the answer from a man. The man answers with a smile, showing that his intentions are kind. The woman continues to look, expressing an easy concern, but trying not to show it. The man, paying attention to her anxiety, takes steps forward, confident that everything will be in order. The woman thinks about how important it is to observe order, despite all the upcoming difficulties. At this time, the man throws an occasion for the next step in the conversation. The woman begins to understand that they still did not come to the decision, and it bothers her. The man, making fun, says that they still cannot avoid the upcoming decision. The woman decides to answer decisively, realizing that she should take responsibility for her future. The man, noticing her reaction, realizes that she is ready for the next step. She finally pronounces the word that makes him think. The man responds with a serious expression, realizing that the conversation between them has reached its climax. The woman continues her way, resolutely moving towards the goal. The servant is approaching, and they continue to go in the direction that a woman chooses. The man finds the moment to discuss more serious issues with her. The woman feels how the situation becomes more and more tense, but retains confidence. The servant calls the doorbell, and her anxiety returns. A woman with confidence approaches the door, ready to answer any questions. They are faced with an unexpected visit, which makes the woman think about what they have to do. As a result, the situation will clarify, and the woman understands that she should be ready for any turn of events. A woman turns to a man, mentioning the Grand Duke of Reborn, which hints at the importance of the issue under discussion. The man holds back himself, but he can see the tension in his face when he answers. She apologizes for the visit in difficult times, but the man reassures her, saying that it's okay. He continues, explaining that all books and documents related to the jewel are still in place, despite the death of his father. She listens carefully, pondering his words, and sits down to continue the conversation. A man with a serious expression on his face calls the jewel that he is looking for. Holy Olga. She nervously holds a cup of tea and her hand trembles slightly with experiences. At this time, noisy steps are heard that attract the attention of men and women. A woman falls silent and experiences strong experiences when she hears a mention of jewel.